Right, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. This is Morning Cafe. Karibu sana. I'm usually Stanley Nyeringita, and being a Monday, we're discussing matters health. According to the Constitution, by the way, it says, Article 43, that every person has the right to the highest attainable standard of health. Taka ujiulize this morning, do you have the highest attainable standard of health, really? Then talk to us. 22047 is our SMS number. TV47KE is our Facebook page. And at TV47 News is our page on X. Mine and Nyeringita _ we definitely love to discuss that, and particularly what has been happening in the country. Kenya has had the whole world talking about Kenya. A month now, the protests in. What does this mean even for our state of health in the country, state of the mind, the mental health in the country, and to just have the right mind for this conversation? Her name is Nancy Nyambura. She's a psychologist at MSF, which is Médecins Sans Frontières. That's as much as my French, the pronunciation. She probably, good. Yeah, it's good.
Yes.
C'est bon. Oh, vous parlez en français? This is me making sure that my French teacher remembers I speak French of Eastern Africa. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Oh, yes. First of all, is according to Article 43 telling us that we should have the highest attainable standard of health. Yako iko sawa?
I suppose so. I'm working towards that.
You're working towards that.
I think it's an ongoing process. You don't say, now I've attained, I stop acting on it. It's an ongoing process.
Oh, yes.
It's a culmination of what you do on a daily basis. Yes.
Right. And when you ask many Kenyans right now how even the mental health is, for some who have actually been on the front line of what is happening in the country, a month ago, a time like this, we're talking about anti-finance bill protests. A month ago, a time like this, young people went to march to parliament and even wakavunja wakaingia ndani. And even before that, the kind of events that were happening in the country really even shook the world itself, really.
Right, right.
From a psychologist's point of view, what do you make of, first of all, even before you get to the deaths, to the injuries, to all that building up? When young people came out and said, we are tired, we are faceless, we are leaderless. What do you make of this from this generation, really?
Right. Quite unprecedented occurrences the last 5 weeks. What do I make of it? I would say probably we didn't see this coming as a nation. Now I speak, as part of the community. And I can't remember who said that protest is the language of unheard. So it's not something that happened out of the blue. Probably the group that pushed to enter parliament, they felt probably this is, if I push this far, this is when I'll be heard. I've not been heard, I've not been seen, I've not been humanized. My complaints, my issues have not been humanized. So it was a build-up of frustration. It was a build-up of seeking solutions and not finding solutions. So I'm talking about people who've been pushed, emotions that have been, I would say, for example, pressure cooker, at some point, the pressure has to come out. So I would say maybe that pressure was coming out when we saw what we saw 5 weeks ago. Yes.
Right. Let's talk about even the impact of the digital platforms, because right now there's so many.
Yes.
X,
yes.
TikTok,
yes.
WhatsApp itself, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, so many. But then now they're the leading kind of platforms that were on the forefront when it came to talking about, to even voice what you're talking about, to that build-up, really. X was one of the biggest.
Yes.
People hosting X spaces that would go to even 50,000.
Yes.
People going to on live TikTok, and people also voicing their concerns here. When, as a psychologist, what do you make of someone, a young person, seated at home, they're joined into either an X space or TikTok? What does it do to even their mental health when they're listening to someone else saying that mimi pali nimechoka, mimi nimefika, nimechoka? This is someone else.
Right.
And they sit and they realize they also relate to this. What do you make of that?
Right. Human beings, we are relational, that's one. So we can't function fully in isolation. We have to connect. We're living in a, as you say, a platform, IT, it has availed a space for people to connect in a much deeper and wider way than maybe, say, 20 years back. Because then I'm able to hear someone who is in Nyamira, is sharing their experience while seated in my house here in Nairobi. I can hear someone who is seated in Siberia, talking about their experience. So I think it availed platform, and probably it replaced, growing up, I remember we used to have social halls. Probably that shows which generation I belong to. We used to have social halls. I remember I once attended one in, must have been Jericho or something like this, just to see what it is. And I remember people talking about social issues that are affecting them as a community. So this space avails the young people, and I believe it's not just a Gen X, who are Gen Z, who are listening. It's everyone. They sort of identify or they feel like I'm humanized. My experience is not unique to myself. Someone else is having similar experience. Someone is feeling frustrated by the joblessness. Someone is feeling frustrated that I might not complete my, my degree because things have changed. So on one hand, it gives them space to identify with each other, and it takes off that why me aspect to your experiences. It makes you feel I'm not alone. On the other hand, also, it can also feed into that communal frustration, communal anger. Like guys, they were quite passionate because one of the driving factor, one of the driving force when it comes to protest is emotions. People are expressing their emotions, our anger, our frustrations.
And do you think people are able to express more openly when it comes to digital platforms, because you're doing this in a space where it's just your bedroom, it's just an enclosed space, it's you and the phone, and you're able to say for an X space, you raise your hand, you're given the chance, you talk. There are no people looking at you. You might even probably have a pseudo account. People don't even really know who this person is. Does it mean that someone might be able to express themselves more openly as compared to, because we still do have some of these social halls at the moment. I don't know how popular they are even to the young people, but then to a social hall, then you will attend, you have to stand up. You have to say your name. Maybe you even have to say where you come from.
And the chief is there watching.
And the chief is there. And whatever you say is critically analyzed. So you have to, again, balance your thoughts here. Does it mean that for digital platforms, they've given the people the space to openly express themselves?
Yes and no. Yes, like you're saying, I can quickly create a pseudo account and I can express myself unhindered on that one hand, so people are able to give their raw thoughts, But like you're saying, also it can also be a double-edged sword, because also then I'm able to say things uncensored or unprocessed, and sometimes also the fact that I can hide behind a pseudo, I might not take the responsibility of what I've written or what I've said. So there's positive and negative to it, yes.
Nyambura, the World Health Organization tells us that mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn and work well, and contribute to their community. When you take a look at the past 1 month, have we achieved, what has been the state of mental health according to this definition of WHO in your analysis?
It's been quite intensive, I would say, and quite impactful, and I imagine my fellow psychologists would agree with me. We've seen things we've not seen before. So it's a very new experience for all of us as Kenyans, right? And maybe also for the rest of Africa, those who are witnessing what has been going. Not the rest, but majority, because we've had similar experiences in other countries like Egypt and all that.
Actually, recently Bangladesh, quite a number of people have lost their lives.
Yes, I saw that. Quite unfortunate. Our mental health has been adversely affected, communally, I would speak as such. Witnessing, whether you participated, whether you've been at the forefront, whether you went for one protest or you've been to all the protests or you've not gone for one, but you've been watching, we have been impacted, all of us. And I would say, I don't know, I don't want to say positively or negatively, but I think negatively has been the biggest part of it, because we have had, loss of human life, we have had injuries, we've had quite adverse, we've witnessed quite adverse issues. And one of the things we need to keep in mind is you don't have to be at the forefront, like I'm saying. You don't have to be there, at the forefront to be impacted. Even seated at home, watching it on your phone, it has an impact. It has an impact on you. Probably the degrees are different, because if I'm in the street and, confronted by maybe police, or I've seen someone dying from a gunshot, it's different as opposed to someone who's just reading, someone was killed. So yes, we've been impacted. The degrees might vary, but yes.
Right. And I want us to talk about now the people who have been on the front line, because as much as I say the degrees really vary, but then for people who have been on the front line here, there are the three kinds of people who we're seeing here.
Right.
The protesters themselves, the journalists who are covering it, and then now there's the police. Well, as much as there's also the goons, I'd also throw in that as well. But then, for this kind of three cadres of people, they all had their own kind of experiences. For the journalists, this is your job. You'd really have to do this. The tear gas, you'd really have to be filming people who have been injured, people who have actually lost their lives, and you're filming that. For the police, they're on the other side. We always, the society has labeled them the enemy when it comes to this. Then again, there's the protester themselves. You protesting with your friend, and this person either loses his or her life or is injured during that day. What does it do to someone's life when you take a look at now for these three types of people?
Right. Journalists and police. You have a duty to inform us journalists. You have that duty to inform us what's going on in the world. And it's not an easy job, so I must say we admire the work that you do to bring this information to us. And the police also, they have a duty to protect, and they're exposed to a lot. To start with, you're human, number one. Before you're a journalist, you're a human being. Before you're a police, you're a human being. So that exposure, and it's protracted, it's been five weeks. Every day you're seeing, or maybe if not every day, every 2 or 3 days in a week, you're seeing people tear gassed, you're seeing people bleeding, you're seeing people dead, on the street. It does something to your psyche, you're witnessing human suffering. And what we say is it's a occupational hazard, So you're exposed to vicarious, we call it vicarious trauma or vicarious stress, because you're witnessing someone else suffering. So it's not yours. Vicarious or secondary, it's not your suffering, but it's someone else suffering, which you're witnessing. So these are two mental health issues or hazards that police and journalists are exposed to, and even us as humanitarian aid workers. We are not displaced, but we are dealing with displaced humans, and we're human, we connect with humans. So when we witness that suffering, it has an impact on us. So, and we advocate, for proactive and robust care of our mental health, given that these are hazards that comes with our occupation. So you're going to be witnessing this for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, as long as you're working in this field.
But then, sorry to cut you short on this one. For, let's say, the journalists, we definitely receive training to prepare ourselves for such scenarios. For the police, they receive their own kind of training on that. But then for protester, they don't have this, any kind of a training for this. So first of all, because we always say the police have this kind of a training where it's as if they block some of this emotional stuff. And the kind of things that you hear even some police say is really wanting. It's as if it doesn't get to them. From where you sit as a psychologist, how does it come to be that for a police officer, for a trained military person, they some of these things that they see, someone being injured, someone being killed, doesn't get to them.
Right. I do believe there are some mental health programs in the police force, in the Kenyan police force. I've interacted with some psychologists working with the police force.
Okay.
I would strongly discourage blocking. You know, like I block, I don't, because the body keeps the scores. You block, but your body doesn't block. You block, but it's still there in you. Right. So it will be very important to process that. Use the resources that have been availed by your employer, hoping that it's a responsible employer to process what has happened. So you can be able to integrate it in your life and be able to continue functioning like WHO tells us we should function. Now coming to the protesters, very important. You've highlighted a very key thing. Some of them probably have not seen this kind of things, first and foremost. Some of them probably have never had a mental health talk or even awareness. This is what mental health is. And interestingly, to even build on what you were saying, for this kind of protest, it was so different from other years. From, let's say, last year, it was supporters of a specific coalition and a party who were there. But for this ones, you'd even see young ladies there, young men who, well, before they were not even interested in politics. So it's a new thing for them. Right. And united in a common cause. So, of course, I believe all of us, we have our inner resources to cope. Human beings, we are resilient. But sometimes it has a limit, and I imagine I would want to highlight that amongst all these protesters, we have people who have existing mental health conditions, you know, and probably being exposed to these kind of issues may worsen the symptoms for those who have, who have mental health conditions. And on the other hand, there are people who probably, because of what they saw, they witnessed, they had or saw, there may be an onset, of mental health issues. Top of my mind, anxiety is one of them, and I remember, of course, the first weeks we were all invested there, whether you're in the street or not, you wanted to see what's happening. I think it's also responsible to inform yourself what is going on. We picked, a lot of anxiety. We don't know where the police are, or the police are on this street, let's go to this other street. Anxiety, so immediate impact, anxiety, stress, acute, and when talk of stress, we have different types of stress, acute stress. This comes from a very an abnormal situation. It's not every day you walk out of that door and you see as a police holding a gun to your head or tear gassing you. So when you see a police lodging a tear gas can to you, I mean, it causes acute stress. Or when you've been, pushed in a police car and you're put in a cell and you probably have never seen a police cell, it to trigger, very acute or very strong reactions. For example, palpitation, your heart is beating, or you feel like your mouth is very dry, you feel like you're sweating or you're shaking. Some people may lose body functions, throwing up or doing number one or number two, peeing on yourself. All these are acute symptoms. So people reported acute stress. And also we have post-traumatic stress symptoms. This comes when you've been exposed to a traumatic situation and you start, manifesting post-traumatic stress symptoms. For example, you're not able to sleep, like your mind is wounding round and round and round and not able to stop. Replaying what you've seen over and over and over and over. Sometimes people may report nightmares. I remember people reporting, altered bodily functions on X, and some even making fun of it. And also, they were exposed to elements like the compounds that are found in the tear gas, so it comes and impact your health as well. It's an endocrine disruptor, so it comes with a lot of hormonal changes in us. So these are some of the acute or the immediate response I saw people reporting. The sense of powerlessness, and anger, all this, some of the impact. And when I say that, it's layered. First, the protester, they're experiencing it firsthand, but also there are people who are at home who are also probably experiencing some of these symptoms, the powerlessness. What can I do? I remember watching a father saying, I've begged my daughters not to go to the street. And they have said, we have to go, Dad. We cannot stay at home. And he said, I feel so helpless. But then I decided, let me go with them. And, you know, that sense of powerlessness, yes. So those are some of the immediate impact. Of course, there's long-term effects. It's been 5 weeks. And today, I mean, this week is the 6th week, and still there are talks of protest and all that.
As soon as tomorrow.
Yes.
And even as you continue, I'd like to open the phone lines. It's almost half past the hour. Definitely a very good time to open the phone lines. 0795 045 864 is the phone number to call us. You'll be seeing it just down the screen. What you need to do is tell us, how has your mental health been? How has your state of mental health been since all this month plus of protests in the country? How has your state of mental health been? Tuambie tu, fungua roho vizuri, utuambie, how has your mental health been this whole time of protests? 0795 045 864. You can also text us on our WhatsApp number, 0793 267 279. And Nyambura here, she's a psychologist. She'll help you whether get some kind of a tips on what to, some kind of coping mechanisms on that as well. I realized there's another card that I forgot to mention, the medic. Yes, you know, the nurses, the doctors who are on the streets as well. And I remember one of them, Cotton Cabra, saying that please help us watch out to Wapite. You know, it was a female medic. Yes. After the police were there, had refused passage of some of these injured people. What does it do to a medic? Because specifically for medic, I mean, for your profession, you are the ones who give us this training on coping mechanisms, so you live it. You live, breathe mental health. You understand it to the core. But so, because it's one thing to understand it to the core, and it's another thing to learn how to even cope. For medic who was on ground, because they were the ones who were literally with the injured there, even for the handling the dead bodies of those who had lost their lives. What does it do to a medic?
Right, and this is where I mentioned about humanitarian aid workers, because they were there on humanitarian basis. It was free, they were not getting paid for it. They're exposed to the same. It's the same for journalists, you know, that secondary traumatization. And I imagine also, they are human beings first, so also they are afraid, you know, I can get tear gas, I can get shot. And like you're saying, you know, I even remember reading on X, one of the medics saying, oof, I think I need psychological debriefing after what I've seen. Which I really admired, because
what does that mean?
Psychological debriefing. This is, you know, after an experience, after you've had an experience, you know, a psychologist takes you through a session, a guided session, where you discuss what you've seen, what you heard, and the impact it had on you, and how, you know, and they can give you some tips on how to take care of yourself mentally, so it doesn't develop. Because when I talk about acute stress, if it's not properly addressed, you know, the one I said, you feel all these sensations, you feel scared, your palpitation, you're not sleeping very well, it happens, you know, immediately after the incident you've witnessed or experienced. If it's not managed very well, we normally say after 6 weeks and you notice the symptoms are not dissipating, you know, you're still feeling fearful, you still feel like it's happening now, then it's an indicator that your mental health is, you know, getting worse, for lack of a better word. So you may develop what we call post-traumatic stress disorders. And it's very prevalent for us in humanitarian aid workers. The prevalence of developing post-traumatic stress disorder is very high. Of course, it doesn't come alone, it comes with its friends. It can come with depression, it can come with anxiety disorders. So it's very crucial to have spaces, and that's why I was saying it's very crucial to have these spaces and resources to work on it. I normally advocate for people to at least find a way to disconnect every day, you know, after you've listened, after you've brought good news to us and bad news, find ways of disconnecting from your work, you know, and reconnecting with your life, you know, and the people you love on a daily basis. On a weekly basis, find, even if it's just a day, to completely disconnect from your work and do other things. Find hobbies, spend time with your loved ones. And also, of course, we have the annual leave for those who are employed. And even if you're self-employed, find moments where you can completely withdraw. Now, coming back to the long-term impact, long-term impact is chronic stress. This is protracted stress because of situations that are not changing. The protesters, you know, are very clear. So this is public information that we want corruption to end. We want accountability. So if these things are not resolved, if they continue happening, what it means that because these are the things that are giving us stress, our stress remains. So it becomes chronic stress. Right. And it's one of the most damaging form of stress. It has an impact on our health in a very adverse way. This is where people come up with, you know, sleep disorders. These are where people develop bodily functions are impaired. This is where you start having high blood pressure. So it's not to be taken for granted when you are exposed to protracted stress. It has a very, very adverse impact even to the quality of life that you live. So that's...
And to cut short, I was taking a look at, on X, a number of people who had said that they were abducted, and they were mentioning some of these things. Yes. Because you, let's say, in one evening or even two whole days, you've been abducted, you don't know where you are. Yes. First of all, help us understand from your point of view, when someone is abducted, what goes through their mind? Because it's definitely a scuffle around you. More than 3-4 men trying to make sure that you get into a particular vehicle. Yes. You're driven to an unknown location. Yes. Whatever goes on there, it's only them who understand. But then what goes in the mind of someone who has been abducted from the moment until they even exit, wachiliwe, and even henceforth. You've definitely and rightfully given us, you know, what goes on in someone's mind. Yes. But then what goes in their mind at that time? What are they thinking?
The primary emotion is fear. Once you realize this is what is happening, fear. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what will happen to you. Our brain is wired to, in a very, very intricate way, if I can call it that. One of the functions of our brain, we have an organ called amygdala. One of its functions is to alert us when there's a danger. I mean, in the days when our forefathers used to live in caves, let's use that theory, it served a purpose, because when he's seated chewing his meat and a lion is coming, you know, he will sense I'm in danger. And then it will help him think, should I fight, you know, or should I flee? And sometimes people freeze, you know. If a snake came in here, I know all of us will react differently. Probably you jump and climb up there. Probably you'll faint here, you know. So either you fight it, you kill it, or you flee, you jump there, or you freeze, you know, you just get stuck. So this is the first thing that happens. However, it's meant to function only for a short time to get you out of danger. But if you're exposed to a dangerous situation, you're being, you know, maybe there's threats, verbal, physical force, you still feel threatened. You still feel, I'm still in danger. So this way, the amygdala, that organ that is mandated with that role of alerting us, it keeps alerting. You know, it's like your alarm ringing all the time, or a fire alarm ringing all the time. We won't have this conversation. We are going to abandon and see what is it. We need to go outside. We need to go for safety. So the same thing. So they are in this state for days or for hours, and it comes with an impact, because it then raises your stress hormones. We have hormones, you know, that goes high when you're stressed, adrenaline and cortisol. And if you paid attention at the beginning of the protest, the next 2-3 days, people are reporting a lot of aches, you know. Hey, I feel like my whole body was beaten up. But it's the stress hormones, because it's lodged in your muscles. You understand? So you start feeling pain, back pains. You feel like you went to the gym, or you feel like someone beat you up. So these are some of the things they experience. These are chronic, depending on the activity or the whatever is done by the abductors. Some may leave traumatized. trauma, you know. And trauma is a Greek word. It means wound, yeah, kidonda. But now when you talk of psychological trauma, it's a mental wound, you know, a wounding in your psyche. It comes when you feel your life is threatened or your integrity has been compromised as a person. So they may come with trauma. Some people may come out with, you know, very stressed. And I think it's very important for these people to, whenever they are ready, it's for them to seek support and to go to a place where they feel safe enough to process what happened. Because I notice also people are rushing them. Why are you not talking about what happened? It doesn't work like that. People talk when they are ready. People talk when they feel that I'm ready to speak. Yeah, we cannot rush them. Yeah, so it's very important to be assisted by a professional person to integrate, to process, you know, what happened, and then to integrate it, you know, as part of your life experience, so you don't get stuck there. You're able to move. It happened. But I'm still able to live a productive life. Right. Yes.
Let's talk about now the flip side of it, where, and this particularly goes to, let's say, journalists as well as even for the police. They are used to such kind of scenarios. I mean, this won't be the first rodeo. They're used to such kind of protests, so there's that rush for them. They are excited to be part of this. Is that normal for them? Because I mean, I'm even having conversations with you know, my fellow colleagues, I'd really be psyched about covering some of this protests. Even for the police, for them, they'd want to be part of this, you know, as well. Is that normal for someone's even mental health?
That's a good question. And I relate with it with our work as humanitarian aid workers. And I mean, over the years, we've seen people who say, for example, I don't know where we have an adverse humanitarian crisis at the moment, maybe say Palestine. Someone will say, don't send me maybe to Ethiopia, send me to Palestine, because that's where the action is. It can get addictive, the adrenaline, the action, the fast-paced events. On one hand, it comes with a lot of fulfillment. You know, I've been able to cover this. I've been able to bring this information. I've been able to help this group of people. So I'm not saying that people are doing it for adrenaline kick. There are people who feel fulfilled. But what is important is to pay attention then if you notice, you know, a change in your functioning. If you notice things that used to give you a lot of joy are no longer giving you joy. If you notice, maybe, for example, if you're taking alcohol, the amount that used to give you a kick is no longer giving you a kick. You have to increase. Then it's an indicator your capacity is compromised. Yeah? So you need to stop and reflect, what is it that has changed, you know, in me? What is it that I'm looking for when I'm going to do this coverage, you know? Take a pause, yes.
And even think, what's the whole goal of...
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Sorry?
No, it's something that I advocate amongst, you know, our staff when they're going to these missions, you know, or to where we work, because we work in places where there's a lot of human suffering. So to ask yourself, you know, why am I doing this? Why? And to be very, very honest with yourself. Right. Yes.
I want us to focus on something that a number of us, if we are digital platform users, we've encountered misinformation, disinformation, and really fake news. And from a psychologist point of view, what that does to someone, the kind of impact actually some of these things have. You had mentioned a bit of it when you're starting, but then I'd really like to now focus on, because there was, let's say, for example, the quarry kind of bodies, either for someone who was there, the residents around there, or if you're watching some of these videos, what it does when you're consuming this. But then now let's say, kind of fake news and misinformation that was also on some of these platforms, what it does to even citizens as well.
Right.
The psychological point of view of this.
Yes, and I had put it in the coping, because we are in a very good time where you get a lot of information, but also amongst these there is also misinformation. So I think there is care, you know, to critique and not to abandon that ability to critique, you know. Don't just take, consume, critique, and also allow yourself, you know, to consume information from credible sources. Of course, there was a lot of sensationalism. There has been, I mean, and there still be.
Yeah.
So it's very important also to be objective when you're consuming and limit. It's like watering a plant. If you have a plant in your house and you put a lot of water, what will happen? At some moment, the soil will be so saturated it cannot contain the water. And what will happen? Either the plant is going to die or the water is going to spill. It's the same thing with our brain. We can only saturate it to a certain point. So limit what you're consuming, like you're talking about, because also one of the protracted or long-term impact is that exposure to very traumatic images and information stays with us.
But then how do you balance the quench for information? You really want to know what is happening.
Yes.
Particularly, let's say if you're around Kware and you're hearing, around where I live, there's this happening. But then also limiting what you consume. How do you balance that?
And I want to see and I want to tell my friends, I was there myself, it's true. How do you balance? Why do you want to see, you know, those pictures? What will you do with that information? I mean, you can tell me there were dead bodies that were found in Kware without having to show me those images, and I'll still get the message. So I think also that curiosity it's like a chase for adrenaline. Social media can be very addicting. You feel like I've been scrolling on X. It's just someone updating about, I don't know, the weather, food, blah, 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 blah. I want something, you know, that will excite me. So also you have to be very careful. You have to have proper hygiene when it comes to use of social media. It also depends on who you're following. You can curate your timeline, you know. So this is what I'm talking about, credible sources. And I know right now there has been measures on how images are shared, you know, like you put a disclaimer. So for me to be able to click and open that image, it's my initiative, but the image is there. So have some discipline around your social media use. Have some discipline, especially for those people who have a lot of influence. We are at the age of influencers, people who have a lot of followers and people who follow you for news on social media. Be responsible. Just remember whatever you share is impacting people's health. So is it necessary for you to share those images, you know? You could write, you can do a write-up without sharing those images, because this is one of the ways we keep trauma in our body through our senses. What you saw, what you heard, what you smelled, what you tasted, what you touched. So when you're consuming these images, and I remember back in when we had the Westgate incident, media got a bit of backlash because they were not censoring those images, and I've seen a lot of progress, which I really am proud of in media, mainstream media, in terms of sharing traumatic news. So yes, not to repeat myself so much. Right.
And speak of even sharing, over the weekend, President William Ruto shared his mind on what he said, enough is enough. And that has been covered on a number of front pages of the local dailies. Now, on the point of view of someone's mental health, either they were there during all these weeks of protests, either they were thinking, now this coming Tuesday, which is tomorrow, is now going to be my first. I've seen different pictures, my friends have told me different stories, I also want to be there. And even from the president's message saying, I will deal with whoever is going to be there ruthlessly, really. What does that do to even the kind of tone from someone, from a leader, and how does it boil down and trickle down to the young people who are listening to this mentally?
Right. Before I answer that question, I think I want to highlight a very key thing about all these protests. One of the things also key to remember as an impact is a moral injury. And this comes when people feel that I was not able to prevent, you know, maybe something happening. I was not able to prevent despite all the protests, I've not been able to change anything. You know, the same people have come back, you know. The people that I was protesting for them to go, they've come back.
or maybe you were with a friend and they got shot, you were not able to help them.
That guilt. So I think also, and even parents, you know, I cannot protect my child, that hopelessness and powerlessness. Yeah. So to have that in mind. Coming back to your question, I just want to re-echo what I had one of the panelists in just a ended session, Pogisio, say, Honorable Pogisio. He talked about compassion as a leader, and I think we undermine that. A lot of studies have been done on leadership, and what is coming out clearly is effective leadership is someone who is connected with the people, because one of the innate need of human beings is to be seen, to be heard. You know, I've seen you, I've heard you. You humanize this person, you humanize the experience. All of us, it doesn't matter who you are, you have that inborn need to be seen and to be heard. And of course, when you're ignored or you feel like I'm being dismissed, you feel, you know, frustrated. So compassion is very important, and empathy. You know, empathy is understanding, you're putting yourself in my shoes, you know, or myself putting, I putting myself in your shoes. You know, I'm not a journalist, but when you tell me you can't sleep or you can't cope, I hear you, you know. I'm able to understand what you're saying and not downplay it. So I think it's very important, and it's calling for a moment of empathy and a moment of compassion. I think we can achieve a lot with that. And it's been, and I mean, this is from empirical studies, so it's not things we are thinking in our mind. There is study, there is evidence that...
and someone watching you this morning, they're wondering, Nyambura, you've told us all this, the coping mechanisms. I might be going through some of these things. I maybe was in the first week of protests and I experienced this, and I'm going through this. Does it mean then that I avoid tomorrow's protest? Does it mean that I give it a white bath? Does it mean then that I also engage with it? Help us understand this.
Right. I would say know your limits. All of us, we have limits. How do you know your limits? For you to know your limits, you have to know when you're functioning well, what happens. So when you start seeing a decline in these functions, for example, if I sleep very well and I start noticing I'm not sleeping very well, maybe I'm waking up in the middle of the night, or I'm taking longer to fall asleep, or I'm having difficulties waking up, it's an indicator that I need to do something. Something is not working very well. I need to do something. So first, know your limits. We all have different limits, so don't use your friend's limit or other people's limit as your own limit. Number two, build a very strong network of support around you. Peer support, communal support is very important. Have people you can go to and tell them, I'm not okay. And they're going to create a safe space for you to recover and be okay without feeling violated or without feeling like embarrassed, you know. So that social network is very, very crucial. Be responsible in what you consume in this day and age of media, social media especially. Be responsible on what you consume, and remind yourself there will always be information, good and bad, destructive and constructive. It's my responsibility as Nancy to determine what I consume, and what I consume has an impact on my mental health. Take personal responsibility.
And speak of responsibilities, tomorrow is the planned protest. Interestingly, not only even in Kenya, but also in Uganda, the young people in Uganda are also saying that they're marching to parliament. So it's going to be a different events, very historic, so to speak. What do you expect to see, basing on the fact that what you've witnessed previously, the destruction of property and all that, even what it does to even to a business person, what do you expect to see tomorrow? Not only in Nairobi, but in different places of the country. Also, for someone who is going to decide to be part of this peaceful protests, what should they have in mind when they leave their house and go all the way to wherever they're going to go?
Tough question. I would say don't delegate your well-being to someone else. Take responsibility, and it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to stop. It's okay to tell yourself, you know, I've reached my limit. And I think it's very important, even at the end of the day, whatever you choose to do. At the end of the day, find a space where you can process. It can be a debrief, discuss with someone, this is what I saw, this was the most significant thing for me, this was the most difficult thing for me, to debrief, so you can be able to contain that experience and be able to continue with your life.
Do you debrief with a friend? Do you debrief with professional help? I look for Nancy Nyamburu's number, nikuambie, hello, this is what I'm going through, or do I just sit down with a friend and nimwambie, well, this is what has been happening?
That's one of the challenge we have and in the country, and I would say in Africa. The resources are not enough. Okay. There are people who access to mental health information will be probably like this talk, they're sitting in front of their TV. They may not have the capacity to go to a psychologist, and sit with a counselor. This is where peer support is very important. And studies have shown peer support is very, very important. However, they have to be the right peer. Because if I come to you and you tell me, maybe you should drink a whole crate of beer.
But rightfully, because there's so many people watching us this morning, and they really want to understand this conversation. And they're wondering, okay, fine, I'm a peer to someone who has either gone through this, or they're telling me tomorrow they have to go. What do I tell them, really? What kind of maybe questions do I ask them? What kind of feedback do I give to them? Right.
The whole experience it has an existential element to it. And when I say existential, is people are, it has a sense of meaning. I'm fighting for my future. So you may not be able to tell someone go or don't go. I think moving away from is it right, is it wrong? But like I said, people are resilient. You could ask questions like, for example, what would be your limit? What would make you to pause in the street if you see something and, like, okay, I need to go home and first take care of myself. This is my limit. Those are some of questions you can ask someone. What would be your limit? Right. How can I support you? And of course, there are people, and there's also an element of loss. A lot of people have lost. One of the questions you can ask someone is, how can I be of help? Because sometimes we assume we know what people need. We don't. The only way to know what you need is for me to ask you, how can I help you? How can I be of support to you? And someone will tell you, maybe I just want you to come, can I come and, stay with you tonight, Or can we meet tomorrow for a coffee? So you may be, and that's in a simplicity way. People might need more things. For example, I need health care because there are people who have been injured, people who have gotten long-term injuries, or their capacity have been reduced, in a very significant way. So you may listen, and then you can also know your capacity. If you don't have that need, you can direct them. Yeah, there is a group of psychologists who are offering mental health services for free, psychologists for Kenya. And so just know you can reach out and ask, amongst the medics, because they are working closely with the medics. Mental health, physical health, they are very integrated. You cannot separate one from the other. So you can reach out to the group of the medics that are offering support during this time and tell them, I need psychological care. I don't have a physical wound, but I think I need psychological help. And you'll be linked to a psychologist to support. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Something else that is really critical. This reminds me, I'm just taking a look at a particular diary in Homa Bay County. This is a name that many of you might have heard, Denzel Onyango. He's a 23-year-old GOtv student. His burial is scheduled to happen today at Karachuonyo in Homa Bay County. Why is Denzel being buried? He lost his life on the June 25th, following the whole finance bill protests. His family is going to be among those people who are trying to bounce back. And not only even Denzel's family, so many others, Rex, there's the whole list of families who are trying to bounce back to reality, really. And the society knows these families, so there's that bit of getting back to reality. Not only even for those who lost their lives, even for those who were abducted. We've talked about them briefly, but then there's the aspect of now this person walking this journey alone, but then now there's the aspect of this person again getting back to his normal day-to-day life.
Yes, yes.
How does this happen, Nyambura?
And my condolences to all those families who have lost their loved ones during this time. Maybe not to try to get back to your normal life. Try to because it's a new experience. It will not be the same.
There's no you can get back to what you used to do.
Quote unquote. I mean, there are many things that you continue doing, but for example, if it's a loved one who's been lost, life cannot be replaced. I know there's Acute. Kenyans came and contributed a lot of money, and families are getting something from this kitty, but life cannot be replaced. So it's about moving forward without this person. Grief, loss and grief. You know, grief, it's a process. Don't be rushed. Of course, people will go back to normal lives, others, but you've lost a loved one. It will not be life as usual. So it's grieving the way you know. Take as much time as you need. Don't be rushed. And seek help if there's, I mean, you feel that I cannot grieve. Sometimes, because losing a loved one because they were sick, you know, they had a long-term illness, for example, like cancer, is not the same as losing a 23-year-old from a gunshot. It's not the same, yeah? So,
and wasn't, just to add on that, I mean, photos of some of these people were spread online.
Yes.
That definitely has a dent even in the family, because they're seeing some of these videos, photos of very macabre kind of photos of them. Yes.
And the ethics around social media is very, very compromised. And this is why I'm advocating, and I keep on advocating. Use social media in an ethical way. Why would you want to put a photo of someone who have died? What impact will it have on their family member?
But then, so what's the balance between seeking justice for your loved one versus grieving? Because you tell us that you take your time to before you even seek help and all that. But then how do you draw the balance between, because this family at the end of the day is seeking justice. The loved one was killed and this was recorded really. But then you also need that time to grieve. How do you balance this two?
Right. And taking time doesn't mean don't seek help. Take time to grieve can also be, you know, going to speak to a counselor, going to speak to a spiritual leader, going to speak to elders in your family, whatever it is that, how you grieve, depending on your socialization and culture. Seeking justice is also part of grief. It's part of grieving, you know, because wanting to find who killed this person and why, and this person being brought to, you know, to take responsibility for the action. You're seeking justice. It's a way of processing your grief. Some people even go ahead and have foundations as a way of grief, you know, open a foundation in the name of my departed as a way of grief. So that's why I'm saying grieve the best way you know, so long as it's not harming you or harming other people. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
How about closure? Because now there's the whole concept of closure, even for families. Some of these families, for example, for Denzel Onyango, at the end of the day, they'd want closure. They'd want to know this is what happened, and okay, fine. To masamehe, whatever they will actually say. How do you seek closure?
A good question. I would advocate, instead of looking for closure, look for ways to grieve, because in the process of grief, you're able to integrate it happened. And this is the meaning I've made out of that experience of losing a young person, you know, with a promising future. And I've integrated this experience as part of my life experience, and I'm able to move forward without forgetting this person. So versus I'm looking for closure. It's like you're looking for a specific thing. I'm looking for that red cushion, you know, and it can come with a lot of frustration. Versus I'm exploring all this room, this table, this camera, and I'm seeking meaning, you know, and I'm trying to integrate this experience in my life. I think that is more healing, I would say. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I think even for some viewers, the picking, will it mean then that seeking closure would be not as healthy?
No, I didn't say that. Maybe it's also seeking closure, but seeking that process of healing, because my person has died and then they're not coming back. I need to grieve, however I know to grieve, in a way that is making meaning to me. So that's why I'm insisting, grieve in the way you know how to grieve, right. Because that is the way that will make meaning to you.
Right.
It's a process. Grief is a process, right. And we don't replace, and the pain doesn't go away, the pain of losing loved one. What happened is we are able to live. I can contain this pain in my heart, and at the same time I can also still be able to contain joy. Right. I can grieve my loved one who has gone and cry for them, but also I can still celebrate the life that I lived with them. And the time that I shared with them. So the two are able to coexist. Yes. Right. Yes.
Remember the question of the day that we're asking you. We had two sets of questions you're asking you. First off, on our Facebook page, why do you think men find it hard to talk about their mental health, and particularly this whole month? The number of men who experience this, why is it hard for them to even talk about it? I'll be sampling some of your views here. Also, the question was, this whole month, how has your state of mental health been? Umeumia, umepoteza your loved one, umekuwa injured, umekuwa tear-gassed pia. How has your state of mental health been? Our phone numbers are open, 0795 045 864. Ndio namba ya kutupigia simu. She's here, she's a psychologist. She'll be helping you also understand. Just to review some of these comments here, then we'll also be taking a look at because when you started, Nyambura, you gave us the review of last month, of this 1 month that has passed. I'd also like a review of, because we've had a review of what tomorrow might look like for someone who is going to go there. But then a review of what the next month is. We could start with that review before we take a look at some of these comments on men's mental health. Your review of what the next 1 month is going to be looking like, because quite a lot of events have taken place. Even just this weekend, the appointment of some cabinet secretaries, what the president said, what the young people are saying as well, matters dialogue, and this goes deep into even the young people who are agitating. What do you foresee psychologically when it comes to what kind of events should we be anticipating the next 1 month?
It may be difficult to predict exactly what is going to happen, but what I can tell for sure is that there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's not going to go away. And with uncertainty, it comes with a lot of what ifs, so a bit of anxiety. When an anxiety is thinking, something is going to go wrong, so there's a lot of uncertainty we're experiencing as a nation. And uncertainty can trigger a lot of sense of helplessness, because I feel like I don't have control of what is going to happen tomorrow. What will happen to my business if there is going to be protest every Tuesday, Thursday? What will happen to my school? What will happen to me? Will I get, the more I'm in the streets, the higher the likelihood of me getting shot or, tear-gassed. Focus on what you can control. I would say that when you're dealing with uncertainty. And this is, we're experiencing this at different levels, all of us, in the country. Even for foreigners who are in the country, they have an aspect of it. Focus on what you can control, on a daily basis. What am I able to control? And like I said, also have these very strong self-care strategies that you can always lean on a daily basis to promote good mental health ongoing, because I told you it's an ongoing. I cannot say my mental health is good this week, I'm not going to do anything about it. No. Right. It's on a daily basis. Right. So have some strategies, because it may go on for months, it may go on for years, we don't know. Therefore, you have to have these strategies so you last, as long as the uncertainty stays.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Thank you for that.
Yes. And when I say strategies, because it's a bit broad or vague, it can be, sleep hygiene, use of media, move your body, get some sunshine, have someone you can speak to. Very, very, basic things that we do, but have a very big impact on our well-being.
Right.
Yes.
A very interesting comment here. DCA Hunter Nasama, before we talk about mental health, let's accept that everyone of us is mad, including the psychiatrist, Unimoniake. We've posted that question there. Why do you think men find it hard to talk about the mental health? Focusing on men really because tunaambiwa that 58% of men have mental disorders. Think about that this morning as we talk about matters mental health.